All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into something that, well, it gets overlooked when we talk about bipolar disorder. We're going to go way beyond just mood swings and look at a really core, kind of hidden challenge. So let's get right into it. I mean, when you think about bipolar disorder, your mind probably jumps straight to the dramatic highs of mania and the crushing lows of depression, right? But what if that's not the whole story? What if the biggest, most constant battle isn't even the mood swings themselves, but what's happening in the quiet moments in between?
And yeah, that's exactly where we're headed. We're going to get into the science of how this condition can quietly mess with things like our focus, our memory, our ability to just plan things out. You know, the mental toolkit we all rely on every single day. Welcome to the world of cognition and bipolar disorder.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we have to look past the symptoms everyone knows about. We need to focus on what's happening in the cognitive brain. That's the part that does all the heavy lifting for thinking, learning, and remembering.
And that brings us to this key concept, cognitive dysfunction. Now, in the world of bipolar disorder, this isn't just about feeling a little off when you're in a mood episode. No, we're talking about persistent, real difficulties with mental tasks. Things like paying attention, remembering stuff, or even just planning out your day. And here's the absolute kicker. These struggles can hang around even when your mood feels totally stable, a state that doctors call euthymia.
Right. And you got to understand, this is not a one-size-fits-all problem, not even close. The cognitive side of bipolar disorder is a huge spectrum, and it hits every person in a different way.
In fact, check this out. Research actually breaks it down into this fascinating three-cluster model. So you've got about 40% of people who have pretty broad, significant cognitive challenges. Then there's another 30% who are selectively impaired, meaning they only struggle in a couple of specific areas. And then, and this is so important, about 30% are pretty much cognitively intact. Their thinking skills are fine. It just goes to show you the incredible variety hiding inside one single diagnosis.
So what kind of skills are we talking about here? Well, the big ones are things like attention and just how fast your brain can process things. Then there's verbal learning and memory, so how well you can learn and then recall what you've heard. After that, you have executive function. Think of this as your brain's CEO. It's in charge of all the planning, organizing, and problem solving. And finally, something called social cognition, which is basically the ability to read the room, to pick up on social cues.
So the obvious next question is, why? Why does this happen? And as you might guess, there's no single easy answer. It's more like a tangled web of things that are all connected.
Okay, so first up, the illness itself. There's some thinking that manic episodes can be, well, kind of toxic to the brain, especially in parts that are crucial for memory and planning. And the data backs this up. Studies show a really clear link. The more manic episodes someone has had, the more trouble they tend to have with these cognitive skills.
Then there's another huge piece of the puzzle, life experience, especially from early on. There's a ton of evidence now showing that childhood trauma can seriously impact how the brain develops. And for an adult with bipolar disorder, this can just pour fuel on the fire, making those cognitive challenges even tougher to deal with. And the list just keeps going. It really paints a complex picture. You've got other conditions that often come along for the ride. For instance, get this, nearly 40% of people with bipolar disorder also struggle with substance use. Then you add in things like bad sleep, metabolic problems like obesity or diabetes, side effects from medication, even anxiety. You can see how all these threads get tangled up and really weigh on a person's cognitive function.
And look, this is so important. We're not just talking about some abstract problem inside the brain. These cognitive issues have very real, very serious consequences for how a person gets through their day-to-day life.
And this quote from the research, man, it just hits you. It says that cognitive functioning, how well you can think, might be a better predictor of your future than the severity of your mood swings. Think about that. It suggests that your ability to focus and plan could be more important for your success in life, at work, in relationships, than the mood stuff alone. That completely reframes what we should be focusing on for recovery.
And if you need a number to make it real, here it is. 65%. That's the percentage of people with bipolar disorder, even when their mood is stable, who have major problems at work. A staggering number. And you can draw a direct line from that difficulty right back to those hidden cognitive challenges with focus, memory, and planning we've been talking about. Okay, but this isn't all doom and gloom. Not at all. Because researchers have been working hard on this, looking for ways to manage and maybe even reverse some of these cognitive problems. They're essentially trying to find ways to, well, to rewire the brain.
So when you look at the treatments, they basically fall into two big buckets. On one side, you've got the pharmacological route. That's using meds, things like lurasidone or even erythropoietin, trying to target brain chemistry and what's called neuroplasticity. Then on the other side, you have non-drug therapies, and the one that's getting a lot of attention is a kind of structured training called cognitive remediation, or CR for short.
So what is this cognitive remediation thing anyway? How does it work? Well, it's a super practical, skills-based program. It kicks off with just education, helping people understand their own specific cognitive strengths and weaknesses. Then they move on to training, usually with computer exercises to sharpen up attention, memory, and so on. The next step is all about learning workarounds. Compensation techniques like using planners or apps. And then comes the most important part, taking all those new skills and actually applying them to your real everyday life. So, what's the verdict? Does it actually work? Well, the signs are definitely promising. Studies do show it can lead to real, measurable improvements in things like working memory and problem solving. But it's important to remember this field is still pretty new, and the results aren't always consistent. The general feeling is that we need a lot more research to figure out exactly how to use these treatments and who benefits the most.
All right, let's do a quick recap of the big takeaways here. Number 1, cognitive struggles are a core part of bipolar disorder, not just a side effect. Number 2, it's a spectrum. It affects everyone differently. Number 3, these challenges can actually have a bigger impact on daily life, especially work, than the mood swings. And finally, number 4, new treatments like cognitive rehabilitation offer some real hope for rewiring the brain and improving people's lives. And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. For decades, treatment has been all about stabilizing mood, right? But as we learn more and more about the brain, you have to wonder, maybe the next great frontier for bipolar disorder isn't just about managing the episodes. Maybe it's about treating the mind itself, about strengthening those cognitive skills that let a person not just survive, but actually truly thrive. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.